Hello, everyone. Welcome to Toxin Tuesday talk show hosted by You Define Wellness and Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance. I'm Denise O'Malley and the founder of You Define Wellness, and we welcome you to this edition. We're going to be talking about insurance today. I know it's everyone's favorite subject, right? Hey, I've had my entire career in the insurance industry until about 6 years ago, so this is actually going to be fun for me. But joining me today is Kathy McCarty, the founder and the genius behind Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance. And Kathy, you want to say hello?
Hello, Denise, and I welcome Sue Boynton from State Farm. It's great to be here again on our very first episode with our guest expert.
Yeah, we've been talking about this, and I'm really excited because we've got a number of subjects that we're going to be bringing to the table. But since your story started with, and Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance started because your own home, it was contaminated and you couldn't live in it. And so it started with probably one of your first phone calls was to sue your insurance agent, right?
That's absolutely correct. It's a unique journey that I welcome people to read about or to reach out. But my home was contaminated by an individual when I temporarily rented it out. I thought I had put all the right protections in place, including a management company to vet the tenant, and as well as other protections. And that's why we're here. We're here to find ways to prevent these types of things to happening to others.
Absolutely. Sue, welcome to our show. We're delighted to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So I have to ask you, when you got that phone call from Kathy, what went through your head?
Well, the first phone call, we didn't know the extent of the situation, because actually her first phone call was when she thought she had a break in her sewer line. And I was actually happy that we had added that endorsement, a new endorsement,
Right.
just before that happened. It wasn't until later she found out the extent of the damage to her home, and that was really disappointing. To watch a friend and a client go through what she went through.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So most people think, I bought my insurance policy, I'm covered for everything. Is that true, Sue?
That's true that most people think that. I would say it's a common myth that everybody says, well, I bought insurance, I must be covered,
Yeah.
And we all think, that's why we're paying those premiums, is to have that protection. And you probably know, Denise, if with your background in the insurance industry, that there is no policy that will cover everything. With the exception maybe of a life insurance policy. If you die, they're probably going to pay.
Yeah.
But there's no policy that covers everything. And that's probably the biggest myth, is that every policy has its exclusions, its qualifiers, if it's ifs, ands, and buts. And so you just need to know what your situation is and get as much protection as you can for that, because you can't buy insurance for everything.
Yeah. And well, let me set the stage for those who are coming new into this conversation. So Kathy had this home in beautiful Evergreen, Colorado, up in the mountains. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's just heaven on earth. And she left the country for a while and used a property manager to hire to rent out her house for her while she was out of the country. And Kathy, do I have that part right so far?
Yeah, I was in and out,
Okay.
kind of rebuilding the next chapter of my life. So yes.
Yeah. And then while you were out, I'm going to give the abbreviated version, because we could be here for a long time talking about the long version of it, but the abbreviated version was you came back and you discovered that the tenant that the property manager had rented it to was cooking meth in your home. Is that correct?
That's ultimately what happened. Like Sue said, I actually had a water line break at the home. That's what brought me there. I recognized some equipment that led to learning about the meth.
So that means your house was uninhabitable, easy for me to say?
Once he was arrested, I learned about what meth was and does to a home. I went through the steps of having it tested when I was shocked to learn online, reading that it leaves a residue, a toxicity that could be really dangerous to myself and anybody that was actually in my home. So it wasn't required. I did it. And then because the levels were above our state standard here in Colorado, that test actually gets turned over to our county and state health departments and was recorded against the property, and it was condemned.
Yeah. So how much heart failure was there for you when you realized that your insurance policy, this was one of the things that was not covered?
You know, it was a shocker because of my background. I didn't do Sue Justice in the original introduction. She's got over 34 years in the insurance industry.
Oh, this was not on her. This is a standard homeowner policy.
And so it wasn't on her, but she's got over 34 years in insurance, 22 years in a successful agency. I had over 30 years of lending and finance in my career. I thought I came to the table with, a good understanding of how to protect myself. And I had never even heard that meth was an issue in real estate, even though I worked as in that peripheral, as an affiliate in that industry. And so it was terribly shocking. And I learned you can't safeguard against these types of toxicities in your home.
Yeah. So Sue, why is it not included in the homeowner's policy? I mean, I sold insurance a long time ago. It's not something I would have ever looked for in a policy because it comes about once in a blue moon, I'm sure. But what is it is it criminal activity? What's happening?
Let me just say that most homeowners policies are standardized. So, as you know, if you buy from one company or another company, they're fairly standardized policies.
Right.
They're package policies and the languages are very similar. Most good homeowners policies say, we're going to cover any loss that's sudden and accidental that isn't excluded. And the exclusions are what can get you, intentional acts, if you set your house on fire, intentional acts, possibly terrorist acts, and contamination and pollution are amongst the list of exclusions. So, a lot of people go towards what am I covered for and forget, to ask what am I not covered for? Because now to answer your question, Denise, about why is that an exclusion? I think insurance policies are designed to cover the most common things. The most common some people use the term acts of God, fire, lightning, wind, hail, things like that. And I don't think it's ever been the intent for insurance to cover absolutely everything. For example, your homeowner's policy doesn't cover your land. So people say, well, how can I get my land covered for flood or earthquake? Or you can't, and so those exclusions are in there to help underwriters price the policy, because if they covered absolutely everything, then the price would be astronomical.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that a lot of people don't understand about insurance is that it's not just, it doesn't have in the fine print, hey, we'll take care of everything. It doesn't have that at all. So we have people I know who will be watching this who rent out a room in their house, or they have like Airbnb or something like that, or maybe they're going to sign the house up for VRBO. And is there a different type of policy that they should be looking at for those kind of situations?
Absolutely. And, when we do reviews with customers and they mention things like, oh, I rent out a room in my home, or it's like, you do? You
Mhm.
never told us this. Or the situations that you described. Yes, most companies have different types of policies for what activity is going on.
Mhm.
Whether it's one type if you live in it part-time and rent it part-time. There's one type if you never live in it and it's a complete investment property or rental property, and then there's another type that might be for the short-term rentals like the VRBOs and the Airbnbs. And that one falls under more of like a commercial type policy for motels and hotels, because basically that's what you're doing.
Mhm.
And so you have to be very clear with your insurance professional on what you're using the property for, and be very open so
Mhm.
that they can protect you properly.
Yeah. Now, is there a difference between, would a commercial property have paid a claim if this had been a multi-unit property with a couple of apartments on it or something, and they had meth toxicity?
The commercial policy does have similar exclusions for
Okay.
contamination and pollution.
Okay. So one question I have to ask you is, let's say somebody is concerned about this and they want to set a baseline to show proof that the house was not contaminated before a certain point in time by getting, let's say, a meth test done. Will that help at all, that to be able to show the insurance company that, hey, we have a baseline, there's been no meth toxicity and contamination if something happens down the road?
Well, in your example, it would not. A baseline would not help, unfortunately, because in the situation of Kathy's policy, her home policy covers her house for those types of perils that are covered. Contamination is an exclusion in the policy.
Mhm.
Now, if you try to, if somebody else rents it, then you're looking at the only way that their insurance might be able to cover your house is through their liability coverage.
Okay.
And the liability coverage, like in Kathy's case, the tenant had renter's insurance with a different carrier, but their renter's insurance covers their personal property only and their liability. So if they're found to be liable for causing property damage to her home, that could pay under the liability coverage. But in her case, there were exclusions under that liability coverage for criminal activity. If you're doing things that aren't legal, we're not going to pay. So you have the policy that's on the structure that she had, and then you have somebody else that causes the damage.
Is there any insurance policy that will protect you in that kind of a situation? Because oh boy, that's frustrating.
It's very frustrating. And Kathy has done a lot of research, as have I, with carriers, and we have not found a carrier out there that would cover that doesn't have those exclusions or provides any endorsements to get protection for that.
So your only recourse is civil court, pretty much, which is what Kathy had to do.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
And Kathy did her due diligence.
Yeah.
And making sure she's a property manager to vet her tenant. She made sure she notified her insurance agent of how her house was going to be used. She thought she followed, and she did follow all the steps of due diligence. And sometimes that isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right. The other piece I do want to mention is the step that I took in learning that the property management company, in my opinion, was negligent in their fiduciary responsibility. I had even vetted the management company as to the level of insurance that they had as a management company. Many people don't even go to that, don't even know that they should go to that extent. I was assured of the policy levels that they had, and it turned out they did not have those policy levels. Those were aggregate annual totals. So I encourage listeners to look into the true nature of the property manager that they're looking to use, and those other steps. That's obviously a different a different episode that we will have, but
yeah. Well, I think it's important for this conversation. I mean, you
Mhm.
did everything that you felt that you needed to do. You know, advice, get copies of their policies. Absolutely. Make sure that have an attorney take a look at it. I mean, we don't expect these things to happen, but, you know, as I always used to say in insurance, you can't get the coverage you want after the fact,
Right.
you know, when you need it. You got to make sure that you've got everything lined up as best as you can, and understand that there may be some unforeseen thing that happens that unfortunately hurts. Sue, yeah.
Denise, you asked about is there any benefit to testing beforehand?
Mhm.
And as far as the insurance policy goes, no. There, you know, because it's excluded is excluded.
Yeah.
Now, I think that anybody buying a home or starting to rent out their home should do a baseline test.
I agree.
Because that's your only way to go recourse against a property manager or a vacation rental company to say it wasn't like this before, and your rental person made it this way.
Right. I mean, getting those things are helpful, because you may need it in a court of law, and
exactly,
to prove your case elsewhere. It's not necessarily going to help you with the insurance. Although I'd really like to put a bug in the ear of the insurance industry that they should. But anyway, so Sue,
I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that's always frustrating. That's why I call myself a reformed insurance agent. I left because there were things that were frustrating. It was not necessarily working the way that we want, but we need to remember that all insurance is a perceived financial risk, protecting yourself from a perceived financial risk. And there's some things we can't perceive, and there's some things the insurance industry does not want to cover. Fact of the matter. So, Sue, I'm really curious. Let's move into this real quick. I asked you a question before we hit record, and I love your answer, so I want to bring it out again. What's the biggest headache going on right now in the insurance industry?
I will tell you, one of the biggest headaches for insurance professionals isn't new. It's something that I've been experiencing for 22 years that I've had my agency, is getting people to understand that an annual review of your insurance is important. It's important for you. You know, you go to your dentist every 6 months, you go to your doctor annually, you see your financial planner once a year to make sure you're on track. But you know, some people feel like visiting their insurance agent is going to the dentist, and it's not. It's just, you know, it's a conversation about what has changed in your life over the last year that we need to account for, and a review like that may save you money if you're eligible for discounts that you're not getting. It may not, you know, a lot of people perceive it as, oh, this is going to cost me money. Well, it might if you don't have enough coverage. You know, don't wait for a fire or a tornado or an event to ask, do I have enough coverage? You know, be proactive once a year and have that conversation.
Now, you know, in Colorado, we have a recent event that just happened, and that was the terrible fires up in Superior, Colorado, near Boulder, where there were so many homes that were destroyed. And you know, there are a lot of people right now wishing that they had that review with their insurance agent, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're hearing stories of some people, and my phone's ringing off the hook since the fires, you know, from people that live, you know, 20 minutes, an hour away from those fires. You know, the reality sets in that, hey, that could happen to me, and I want to make sure that I have enough coverage. And our phones have been very active since January 1st.
And it's not just the homeowner, for the person who owns the home, but the person who's renting a home, they really need to have renter's insurance too. Why?
Because your personal property is not covered for a situation like that as a tenant. The landlord's policy does not cover your stuff, and your renter's insurance will give you protection for your belongings. It will also pay for your relocation if you have to be in a motel or things like that until you can find another place to live if needed. And thirdly, it provides you that liability protection if you accidentally knocked over a candle in the landlord's house and burned it down or things like that. It's a really, for $100 a year, you can get a great renter's policy to protect your belongings. It costs a lot to go out and replace everything you own.
It does. And my kids are renting apartments right now, and I've encouraged all of them that they need to get a renter's policy. Like, oh, Mom, it's no big deal. Well, I had somebody in my life whose apartment burned down because of the next door neighbor, their negligence. And if it wasn't for our policy, everything would have been lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good, for any viewers out there that rent property, I can't encourage you enough to put in your lease that your tenant must carry renter's insurance policy, and even go to the step that they must include you as the landlord as an additional insured on the policy, so that if the person quits paying premium and their policy cancels, you're going to get notification.
Great advice. Excellent advice. Kathy, what do you want to add to this conversation?
Well, on that note, I would like to add that not only do you want to be excluded as the landlord, but if you use a property management company, you want to ensure that they actually verify that the insurance was put in place. In the case of my property management company, who had a lease with the tenant, the lease required a $300,000 policy, and when it was actually collected, my memory serves that it only said $100,000. So the actual policy that was required was never even verified. So we have to do the checks and the balances on the people that we hire to serve in our best interest.
Good business does not come from just relying on the words of others. You do need to protect yourself and
verify.
Yeah,
get copies of it, and there's no required standard of standardization in the industry. So you want to be part of that decision-making process and be able to verify the documents that were collected when you vet a tenant. If you're going to play in that arena, it's important to minimize your risk.
Great information here. Final thoughts, Sue? Anything that you want to add?
Call your insurance agent. Ask for a review, and if they're not willing to do that, that's what they're being paid for, is to protect you from risk, and that's their noble profession, is to minimize any risk that you may have. And so therefore you need to be upfront and call them and say, I'd like to sit down and review my coverages and have a good understanding of what you have and what you don't have.
Absolutely. And for those who are watching this video, if you're on Facebook Live with us, I have already put Sue's contact information into the comments section. And for those who are watching this as a recording, you just wait. When the last screen comes along, you will find Sue's contact information. Feel free to reach out to her. Are you only licensed in Colorado, or what other states?
Just Colorado. Yes.
Okay, Colorado only, folks. Absolutely. If you're outside of Colorado, reach out to a trusted advisor in your state that is an insurance agent as well. Final thoughts, Kathy?
It's just been a pleasure to be here and share this topic of insurance with Sue, who has been a friend and a mentor and a guide, as well as you, Denise, in all things insurance. The insurance industry has been there for me throughout my life and my family's life in many other areas, health, vehicles, things like that. So this is to help people take the preventative steps they need to minimize their risk. So I thank you for this forum.
Awesome. Well, You Define Wellness is delighted to put on the Toxic Tuesday talk show Easy for me to say. Toxic Tuesday Talk Show with Kathy McCarty. We very much believe in the 8 dimensions of well-being, of which environmental is one of them, and that all of this goes to our overall well-being. If you're not protected in your home, that's a hit in the financial wellness capacity. If your home is exposed, that's the environmental. There's so many different facets. So we enjoy bringing to you all these different dimensions of well-being to help support you and you're on your healthy living journey. We invite you to visit our website at udefinewellness.com and also to suggest topics wherever you have found this. What do you want to learn about meth toxic awareness? We have a bunch of speakers that we're going to be bringing in, all walks of life that relate to this, and we wanted to kick it off with insurance. So ladies, thank you very much for being with me today. And for all of you who are watching, we hope to see you next week on the next Toxic Tuesday Talk Show.
Thank you.